Hey guys, so your car's recently been having kind of a hard time starting, starts kind of slow, and you're starting in your head to think, well crap, my starter might be going out. Well, it is a possibility that it is, but at the same time you might be able to save yourself that $100 or $200 that it costs to replace that starter. Maybe it's not bad. So the first thing we're going to do is see if we have a bad contact at the battery. So we're going to unscrew our battery terminals and we're going to clean them. Now this battery, the terminals on it has this battery grease that you can buy at the counter at one of the auto parts stores, just that little packet of it. And it was a good solution at just starting when you first get the battery, but it's not something that's going to last a long time. It's supposed to be anti-corrosive and it's okay, but dielectric grease is definitely better. So the next thing to do is actually clean all these terminals. You're going to want to clean both the battery connector, the terminals on it, the battery, just clean everything that yucky grease has on it. If you haven't even, if you never had that grease on there, still just wipe them down. You might want to take some sandpaper to it and just clean up those terminals. Because what we're trying to do is, we're trying to make it so you can easily have just a perfect connection all the time. That's what we want. We want a perfect connection. So this is Honda Pro dielectric grease. You can pick it up at your power sports shop. You might even be able to pick regular dielectric grease up at the auto parts store. Just don't get those little packets. Actually find a little carton piece or like a tube of it that says Dielectric Grease. So what I'm doing is I'm rubbing this dielectric grease. It's actually clear, which is really nice. It doesn't make it look all ugly. I'm rubbing it all over the terminals and the connectors because it's going to keep water out and keep it from rusting and any corrosion. But it's also going to create just a perfect seal on it. You shouldn't really have to worry about it that much, but use enough, but don't just put a little film on there. You can use it a little bit more. Once it clamps down, it's going to move some of it out of the way. It's just like when you use too much grease on an axle and you put it in, it'll scrape off all that extra grease that you didn't need on there. And once you clamp this down, anything that you didn't need will just kind of move out of the way anyway. So you can use a little bit more. I'm just wiping off the extra little part. Might as well, it won't hurt anything. So, of course, always connect your negative first in a car, since they have a negative ground system. And then we're going to connect our positive. So, right before we connect our positive, we're actually going to hammer this connector down a little bit. We're just going to use a little rubber mallet, and so that it gets a good bite onto it, and it's down all the way. It doesn't hurt anything, I guess, if it's at the top. It's just my preference, is I like everything down as much as it can be on it. On the negative side, we're actually going to be able to use the closed end, and on the positive side, we're going to have to use the open end to tighten it down. It doesn't really change anything. Just make sure if you do hammer it down a little bit more, make sure you use a rubber mallet or something and just tap lightly. Don't just run it into the battery. You don't want to crack your battery or anything. We're just lightly tapping so that it just goes to the bottom of it. Now if this solves your problem, which hopefully it will, I'm just fast forwarding this, but if it solves your problem, then you just had bad connections at the battery. Hopefully it does. Try starting your car or your Jeep or whatever you have. Just try starting it, and if it works out well, then there's your problem. You just fixed it, and keep pressing go. And don't forget, no matter what, if this doesn't work for you and you end up going to the next part, which is start, make sure you remove the positive terminal on your battery. You don't want to cause any electrical shorts or problems. Now the last thing I'm doing with this battery is I'm tightening the terminals. I just found that this first wrench that I used didn't work, but I'm tightening actually where it clamps down onto that copper cable, and I just want to make sure everything's as tight as it can be on that. It's just going to keep compressing it. It's not going to slip out. It didn't slip out before, but there's still quite a bit of play that I could have tightened. So I'm just retightening those terminals down onto the copper wire. You might as well. It doesn't hurt anything. And you just want to make sure that your battery, the connectors are snug onto it, and that way they don't just move around. So if they're tight and they don't move, you're in luck. You're good. Now you can start your car. So if that didn't work, we're actually going to be cleaning those terminals to the starter. So for my Jeep, all it is 2 bolts that hold it in, and then those wiring connectors. We have 1 bolt that is right there. You can see it where I'm pointing to. It's right there. That's 1 bolt. And then the other bolt is that one right there. So it's on the underside. That bolt holds it in, and then we have those wiring connectors there. We just unbolt them all, and the starter will pop right out. So the hardest part about this is actually cleaning the starter once you have it out. This thing is nasty. This is the original starter in the car. I just found that out after I took it off. That means this starter is 24 years old and has 24 years of grime baked onto it. So I'm just wetting it to start scrubbing. I mean, this thing is so nasty. It has layers thick of grease, and there's some soap, and I'm starting to scrub it off, and it's just not coming off. It is in some places, but it's not. So just continuously going on soap. I actually leave to go get an item to actually scrape it off with, because I just went through a scrubby piece really easily. You might be able to use some abrasive pads. That might be able to get it a little bit quicker. But yeah, I left to actually go get a scraper, just a metal piece, and scrape the grease off, because that's how much it is. You don't have to make it perfect, but you probably want to put some effort towards it. So right about here is where I found that green label. That was the Chrysler label, and it says that the starter was actually made in Japan. So that was kind of neat. So right about here, I'm pretty much done with it. I scraped as much as I'm going to get. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. Theoretically, you don't have to do this, but I thought it was a nice touch to at least clean it up a little bit. I mean, this is going back on your car, so it'll just, over time, it'll just get greasy and grimy again, but there's nothing wrong with cleaning it now. So now we've decided this is about as clean as we're going to get it, so now we're taking off the nut that connects the solenoid and the actual starter piece together. And we're just wiping down the threads. It's not going to be perfect. We're not really worried about the threads. It's the end piece that the connector actually touches to. So we're just going to get some sandpaper once that's all clean. And we're just going to clean that connector up. We want a nice, fresh surface. And it's really easy. You just take sandpaper or a wire brush. A wire brush would probably work a little bit better, since you can get a little bit more in the nooks and crannies. But sandpaper is just going to work just as fine for what we're doing. So once it's done, we're going to get some dielectric grease, and that's why we bought it. We're going to take some of that, stick it on the threads and at the base there. This is just going to make it nice and easy. It's going to waterproof that. And we're also going to stick it on that connector. So once it's all stuck on the connector, we're just going to put it back on with the nut and cinch it all the way down. Now this is the last part. all we're going to do is we're going to find those connectors that went up to our battery and then one that went into the computer for starting, and we're going to just get some sandpaper and we're just going to rub it at the ends of those two and clean those connectors up. And it's that easy. Once you're done this, all you have to do is just put the starter back in, put those bolts back in, and wherever those leads came from, you just put them back on. Like I did in the previous clip, I put dielectric grease on the ends of the leads, and then I put it on the threads and at the base of where it connects down. And that's all you have to do, just do the reverse of the removal. And bam! Now your car starts real easy, real quick, and you'll never have a problem again. At least with the starter. Now you can just drive away. So if this actually didn't help you, that kind of sucks. Unfortunately, some starters are just worn out over a long period of time. They wear out really easily. This starter was just bad electrical connections, and once I fixed those, boom, it worked really, really great. I have not had a starting issue since, and it's just working from that. Also, don't forget to pick up your tools. You don't want them to rust or get nasty leaving out, so just pick them back up and there you go.